This program is presented by the Special Emphasis Subcommittee, Beltsville. We now present Senderos, Pathways to Science. We are proud to present interviews with 5 accomplished scientists from the Beltsville location. Thank you for joining us in this program, where we will share their journeys and testimonials.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk about my origin and why I am in science. I born in Costa Rica, Central America, in the city of San Jose in 1959. What you would call a baby boomer. And from the time that I had been in Costa Rica, surrounded by rainforests, plants, and all these things, I was very curious about animals and all this stuff. I remember that my first love happened to be dinosaurs, but if you check Costa Rica, is a very recent country and there is no dinosaurs in Costa Rica. My mother always gave me a hard time, but I used to collect beetles and lizards and made them to play like be dinosaurs for me. And I guess that is the connection with the love with insects that happened so strong that in 1972 and 71, I visited the Museum of Insects at the University of Costa Rica, where Dr. Alvaro Willi was the director. And he saw my love for bugs and beetles and my enthusiastic way that I was, that he gave me a book. And he said, if you keep loving insects and all that and decide to be a student at the University of Costa Rica, come and visit me and I will have a job for you. And that happened in 1979. I was part of the agriculture department of the University of Costa Rica as a student for my engineer. And I stopped and visited him and said, I am here. And he gave me a job. And I started getting into insects. But the love started when I was around 12 years old. That is the way that it has been all my time. Very unique, and especially by the opportunity of a professor that saw the potential that I had to do well in a science that is so amazing. I studied at the University of Costa Rica, finished my engineer in 1985. Also, I did a bachelor in plant protection. Worked for a while with the Minister of Agriculture of Costa Rica with insect problems on potatoes, and the hardlands and chayote. And with that, I met Dr. Joseph Sanders, leader of all Central America in the field of integrated pest management. And he offered me the opportunity to do a master. And I said, yes, I want to do a master in integrated pest management, but as long as it's associated with mites, as I did my engineer. And he said, no problem, you're welcome, come visit us and see how you like the field. And start to do my master, start to travel in all Central America, looking at my problems, be one of the few in the area that was associated with these arthropods, these arachnids, because they are more close to arachnids than insects. Give me an open opportunity to meet so many people and travel. I decided that from that I would pursue further studies with acarology, which Dr. Sanders was very nice and said, I need to send you to the United States. I'm working with the USAID. He was able to contact several people at the University of Arizona, the Brigham Young University, and I think Cornell. And at the end, I ended at Brigham Young University, BYU, start my PhD in zoology with emphasis in insects and mites. From there, I did go to Hawaii, Utah, Oregon, California, you know, all the Western states, collecting bugs and collecting mites. It gave me the opportunity to interact with Dr. Barry O'Connor at the University of Michigan, who offered me a postdoc at the end of my PhD in 1996, and start to work with Barry in bee mites and dust mites. And amazingly, he needed to go to the tropics. And we did go back to Costa Rica to collect material in the rainforest and work with mites again. Very, very challenging, very nice, but trouble, insects, mites, and ecosystems has been there all the time. And I never have time to slow down. In reality, some of these things that happened when we were working with mites and plant feeding mites affecting crops and forest trees and things like that was so amazing that one of my very interesting trips to El Salvador and in a publication at the Entomology Society of America. If you want to read it, one of the things that I did in that time and show you how amazing can be being an entomologist, but also at the same time be a person that loves science. You can look at it for the name. The name is Mite Fire in El Salvador, and I will recommend you to read it. It's something that displaying everything: taxonomy, systematics, why we do what we do, how is the impact on the crops, how the things work, and how all these arthropods are associated with the humans independently, be peace or be war. A very interesting thing, and I love that opportunity. The same opportunity working with Barry O'Connor happened that one day, coming from another field trip, I arrived to the office of Barry, and there was Dr. Manja Stetzel talking with Dr. O'Connor, and I said, hi, hello, and Barry said, let me introduce you to the research leader of the lab of the Systematic Entomology Laboratory at the USDA. And I met her, and I started to talk with her a little bit. And suddenly he said, okay, Ronald, go to work with your mites in the next room, and we will decide your future. And I looked at them and said, okay, that's it. And I walk out, and when an hour later, they called me, and they offered me a postdoc with the United States Department of Agriculture in 1997, at the end of 1997, to start in 1998 on plant feeding mites for the country. And the rest is history. I have been here since that time. It has been all around the world in all the continents. Always working with plant feeding mites, and now working with also mites of bed importance, cattle and things like that, and has been extraordinary. I have amazing colleagues in this place that open also a lot of opportunities for research in mites, and now interacting with people at the Arboretum, at the lab of fungi and nematodes and microscopy. It has been fantastic. The use of cryo-SEM, the opportunities that we have is open world. I almost sometimes think if I have the opportunity to be 10 or 12 more years younger and have the technology that we have now at the USDA, and the impact that our institution have is amazing, and that is the reason I am very pleased. About problems and what has been difficult for me. I remember when I was finishing my engineering, that one of the professors noticed that I have some problem with my grammar and dyslexia when I talk. And he, luckily for me, Dr. Mora, PhD in chemistry, have a colleague that was a psychology expert in dyslexia. And he said, do you know that you are dyslexic? And I said, no, I don't know. What is that? I asked, what is that? Because I didn't know. And he said, oh, interesting. And I say, why is interesting? Because if you are dyslexic in your test, you pass your test. But if you are not dyslexic, you fail. And I like, wow, what I need to do? And he said, nothing. I will send you to a referral with Dr. So-and-so in the Office of Psychology to be evaluated. Couple of weeks later, he called me and said, yeah, definitely, you are a very, very dyslexic person. You need to study in this way. You need to work in this way. And you will do oral tests with me every time that we have a test in biochemistry. And he did help me to be able to finish all my studies, master, PhD, all that, because if he didn't realize that that was the problem I have in learning, my learning ability or disability, I would not be where I am now. The people with dyslexia are really good memorizing drawings and things like that, and that is the way that I work. I'm looking at mites, it's like looking at drawings. That is one of the things that I always try to help. I always try to help any person that I notice that have some learning disability, because I can see myself in my life. And mainly is that learning disability is what opened the door to enjoy what I do. What is the advice for scientists in the future? I will say that never fix a unique goal. Always have a goal. It's important to have a goal, but make it that you will have several things with your goals, that you learn that, okay, I want to learn about this mite or this pest problem, but also I would want to learn what is associated with that. If there are viruses, if there are fungi, if there are other organisms, what about temperature? What about soil data? What about nitrogen? What is the plant doing? Always learn to integrate what you see, but see in a way that you observe and listen in the way that you do not hear, but really understand what you are listening. That is my advice. And science is always fun. Doesn't matter what kind of science you decide, you love it and go for it. It's unique and it's the best I have been done. Yeah, I have another hobbies. I have the hobby of history. I love to read history, especially from the time of the Romans and Greeks to today, modern history with all the politics that are going on. And another thing that you learn with history is that history repeats itself. Working with mites and pest problems are in history. And if you know what happened in the past with many pest problems, insect arthropods pest problems, you realize that they are happening again. It's another connection with history. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. My best for everybody. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. And yeah, I am dyslexic, by the way, in English. I am dyslexic in Spanish. I am dyslexic in Portuguese, any language I talk. But no problem. It's not affect me to love mites and work with the USDA in what I love to do. Thank you.
My name is Catalina Salgado Salazar. I work at the Mycology and Nematology, Genetic Diversity and Biology Laboratory at the Beltsville Agriculture Research Center in Maryland. I am a research mycologist and work towards understanding the classification of fungal pathogens that affect agricultural crops. I am originally from Colombia. In Colombia, I was born and raised in a city that is located at the south of the country. One of the Southeast, to say something, states that are in the country that have limits with other countries such as Ecuador. And I grew up there. It's a not so small city. It's kind of a medium city. One of the main characteristics of the city is that it is situated right at right at where volcano is. That volcano is kind of the companion of the city for his whole existence. It's an active volcano, so it was very interesting to grow up in a city where an active volcano was very close by. I did my early school years there, primary school and then secondary school. And when I was during my studies during my secondary school, I got interested in biology. I really liked biology classes. I really liked how the professor was teaching us everything related to that. I liked doing the homework, and I liked it that biology was something that it was very, like, sometimes to say something, you can touch biology, you can touch plants, animals, and in order to study, you have to be kind of in the field and see everything, all the living things. So that kind of caught my attention, and I decided that maybe I should pursue biology as my undergrad profession, and that's what I did. I went to university a little bit far away from the city I originally lived. It was maybe 6 hours towards the north in another department, in another city, in the capital city of another department. And I enrolled in one of the oldest universities that are in the country, that is the Universidad del Cauca. I enrolled for biology, and it was a great experience. As the time passed, I kind of fell in love more and more with biology and what I was doing. I had so many ideas that I wanted to pursue, and things that I wanted to do when I graduated. I want to specialize in this, I want to specialize in that. I went from so many possibilities that at the end, when you start seeing what are the opportunities, it gets narrowed down to more specific studies that kind of benefit better the country, to say something that we live in. So I had a great time there, and then I moved to the capital city of Colombia, Bogota, where I enrolled to do the first part of my graduate studies. I enrolled in a master's degree in biology. And at that point, I had some experience on everything, to say something. And I decided that I wanted to specialize in some way, like microorganisms and the relationship of microorganisms with the environment. Then I found a really nice professor that was very kind and knew so many things about microorganisms, in particular fungi. So I started focusing on fungi in all aspects of fungal biology, fungal systematics and taxonomy, classification. And since then I haven't had any other thing that I like to do or to study that is just working with fungi. I was presented with the opportunity to come here to this country to pursue my doctoral studies that I just couldn't say no. So I The project was really interesting. It was again working with fungi, but this was focused on systematic taxonomy classification of fungi. And it was a little bit challenging to make to meet all the requirements that universities have for international students, for example, qualifications, English, etc., experience. The only thing that it was a little bit difficult for me was English as second language. I had a little bit of trouble speaking and writing, and I think that that's in part because we may have the knowledge. Colombians are very well known to have the knowledge about many things. However, when they are presented in a situation where they have to show, for example, English skill, is like you get a little bit embarrassed and you don't want to make mistakes, so you prefer to stay quiet and not speak up. And that was what happened to me. I was understanding everything. I was able to write very well, and however, when I was speaking, I was having a lot of problems. So, but part of learning is to make mistakes, and you learn mistakes you learn from the mistakes. So finally the university accepted my application, and they recommended that I needed to do an English course as one of the first steps after enrolling to university. And after I came here, it was like everything just opened up. I was able to catch up in all my English skills because you are submerged in the environment, and that's the best way to learn. So I want to be able to be there when a particular problem arises in a particular crop. So my hot topics of research are whatever needs help right now, whatever needs studying, and whatever needs information to be able to secure that crops are going to keep being possible, that they are going to be protected, and that growers are being supported by the science that we are doing in the laboratory. So I have been working, and I'm actually working on from ornamental plants to forest pathogens to fungi that are intercepted at the ports of entry by quarantine institutions like GAFES. So I have a very wide range of projects that I'm working right now, and I think that each one of them is important in its own way because it resolves a question. It gives an answer to a question that is kind of has been a long time waiting for one. So it's great. I think one of the biggest challenges that agriculture is facing right now is climate change, as it has shown that it's affecting not only the crops, that the staple crops that humans depend on and animals depend on, but also the natural resources that we also depend, the forests and the diversity that we depend on. Farmers and the institutions that support farmers, for example, diagnostic clinics at universities, get to the point where they have these new emerging pathogens. They say, okay, also what is this? And that is one of the roles that we have in supporting the agriculture. We can help in the identification and the correct identification of these pathogens to determine possible routes of introduction, for example, to the country or introduction to a particular area. And based on this knowledge that we gather about names, about what they are, what is the kind of general biology of pathogens, the farmers can decide what is the best way of dealing with the problem is, what if they have to modify the management of the disease at the particular crop. They have to take measurements as to and not allow the pathogen to move from other regions. So I think that this part is one of the points where one of the places where we can develop a good program and to help the agriculture. So we will be just doing a tiny part of what it is required to be able to overcome all these effects of climate change. What gives me hope of all this situation is that there are a lot of people like me that are trying to do their best to contribute to the solutions to the problems that we are facing right now. There are a lot of people that are doing research in the better ways to deliver crops to the people that need it most, to improve the nutritional content of crops, to be able to control pathogens in a better way, in a more safe towards the environment, towards human, the development of a biological control of pests, or the development of methods of control pathogens that include natural products, not chemicals that may affect one way or another the environment. I think that what gives you hope is that research is something that is actively happening, and people are aware of all the problems, and we are trying to finding a solution. That is our job, and we take this job seriously. One of the main advices that I give to young scientists like me is just be persistent, be stubborn when we are talking about dreams and goals and objectives. I think that is what defines a lot of people that come from Latin America, is persistent, and we have to keep encouraging young scientists, students, just to be loyal to their goals and persisting in the search of opportunities, because there are opportunities available for many of us. We just have to keep preparing for these new challenges. I have always said that it's very important that these new generations are able to speak more than one language. That is based on my experience and how important it is to be able to be proficient in different languages. So you are even more have more opportunities, because you can are able to understand other languages. So I have some hobbies. It's not everything is researching and work in my life. I work. I work a lot in my home garden. I like to plant. I like to clean my garden and plant plants that are that produce flowers that are good for pollinators. I like to plant native plants. I like to have a big garden full of flowers. And I also like a lot to do puzzles. I like to spend my downtime playing with puzzles and putting puzzles together. Not only because it's fun, it's also because it is also it gives you the chance to meditate, because you can have part of your mind just focusing on what you are doing in the puzzle, finding the right pieces. However, there are other parts of your brain that are also just kind of wander away and start thinking calmly about everything that happened, what is needed to be done, what needs change. So I think that I also do puzzles as a way of meditation. It's a way of having a clear mind to understand everything, not only work related, but also personal life related. And I think that it has worked for me really well.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Jay, for this effort and everyone in the committee. Where am I from? I'm from Costa Rica, Central America, between Panama and Nicaragua. I was born in the city of Alajuela, which when I grew up, it had 60,000 people. As I got out of high school, I think it grew to almost 200,000 people. And now I believe the city has over 500,000. My love for agriculture actually didn't come from Alajuela, because it was more of a peri-urban type of or more of a small city. But it came actually from the area of Sarapiquí. My mom had inherited a little farm there, and we would go there, almost spend there every weekend. And we had some. Then later, when I grew up as a teenager, we had plantains and cassava, essentially. I got interested in science, I guess, because there's always a good mentor, right? In at one point in your life, and for me, it was the teacher of chemistry in high school. She really impacted me. She influenced the way I looked at things, at the world, and then eventually my intention was to become a chemical engineer. At the University of Costa Rica, I actually was part of the school for 1 year, but then I realized that I sort of needed a little more, something more applied. And that's when I moved to biological sciences, and then eventually found the School of Plant Sciences, and again at the University of Costa Rica. Then I graduated with the agronomy. It's a 4-year program, and then an extra year, which is licentiature, which is sort of an extra year to the bachelor degree on plant sciences. 3 years later, I thought that I had already joined a group of faculty at the University of Costa Rica, and we were trying to move forward the group into getting funds. And I thought that having a bachelor degree, a master in business administration would help the group. And at one point I thought that that was my call in life. So I got a degree on business, a master degree. It was a joint program between the National University of San Diego, California, and the University of Costa Rica. Later, I came to the U.S. to have a master degree. I entered the horticultural sciences in Clemson University. Then I stayed for a PhD, we've taken courses at the packaging science school, and then eventually got the PhD on food technology. I realized that in Costa Rica needed to diversify agriculture and not to rely only on bananas and coffee, essentially. So sugarcane was another one that was important, the traditional crop. And at that point, the conditions for export started, cash crops started to be ideal. And however, many of the tropical products produced in Costa Rica were having many issues in post-harvest. And that's how I joined the first national lab on post-harvest physiology built within the University of Costa Rica. I had the opportunity to, as a research assistant, to work with essentially with mangoes, cassava, and a crop that is probably not so well known here. We call it chayote. It's a sort of a squash, but it's a vine. So it is used a lot for baby food. And if you go to a Hispanic market, you would always find it. It's quite important in many of the dishes in Central America and Mexico. I think it's Northern South America as well. So topics that I'm studying now, I think I've been, first of all, I'd like to say that I have been with the USDA-ARS 2.5 years. I came right before the pandemic, so it didn't give me much time to get to know people in person. I think I was the first in BARC that went into quarantine, because within a month and a half, I went back to where I lived before, which was in Rome, Italy, and to complete all my move. When I came back was March 3rd, and the agency had already issued this announcement that those traveling to Iran, South Korea, and Italy will have to quarantine and will be suggested to quarantine. So I immediately went into quarantine. When I was ready to come back, everyone went out. So I didn't have much time to. Anyway, the reason I was saying that is because for 9.5 years, when I was with FAO, my work was not necessarily biological sciences research. It was more, I guess for certain time I was doing research, but more to provide evidence for policymakers. With respect to what are the biggest challenges facing agriculture moving forward, I think we have heard many things in USDA, and I probably agree with most of them. I do think is the fact that we need the high yields. Yes, we need abundance, but respecting the environment and with social justice, I think is that's the simplest way to put it. Is as researchers, it's not an easy task, and for the industry either. So we definitely have something important to contribute to the society. I think the advice that I would say is always think in the big picture, and never stop trying to solve a problem for the short term, and rather look for solving a problem and the long-lasting effect that solution could have. We know that a lot of the research have done many things to solve something, but eventually 10, 20, 30 years later, we realized that that was not such a good idea to bring, because now we're having a bigger problem. So before conducting research, I believe we always have to think, if I come up with this solution, is it going to cause any other problem? And if we try to do it then in a different way, am I gonna create a third problem? Things systematically. I think that's the way to go, and I'm very happy that the USDA now has a framework for the food systems. It is something in which I worked in while I was in FAO. This idea of not just looking at production, not just looking at preserving food, but looking systematically and beyond just production or the commodifying world, but looking at the effects on environment and on the society. So hobbies and other interests beyond science. I've always liked to play a sport. For a long time I was playing soccer and football, and basketball. Now I don't do much sport. I actually realized that Pilates is really good for my neck. With age, all the pains can come, and I think that's a very good exercise. I like to cook, and very important, since we're talking about this Latino celebration. I like to listen to music and dance, especially tropical salsa, merengue, bachata. And in reading, I've been now hooked with legal thrillers that address social justice. And right now I'm actually finishing one by Richard North Patterson, and it's called Eclipse, which I recommend if people like to read legal thrillers.
Buenas tardes. Thank you for the invitation to make part of the Hispanic Heritage Month celebration. Nice to meet you. I am Gloria Solano Aguilar. As you can tell from my very long last name, our American family is a mix of different cultures. The Solano comes from Colombia, South America, where my parents are originally from. And the Aguilar comes from Spain, where my husband's family comes from. We both came to study our graduate degrees in US, after which we established and started a multicultural American family, welcoming our 2 kids. So how did my journey in science start? Since I can remember, I always have a love for animals. I always took care of injured birds, abandoned cats and dogs, which make me dream since an early age that I wanted to be an animal doctor one day. With this objective in mind, I completed my Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree at La Universidad de La Salle in Bogotá, Colombia, where I had the opportunity to be exposed to work with large animal production animals and clinics with companion species and birds. In the last year of my career, I seek the opportunity to apply for a non-paid voluntary position in a large swine production facility that held around 8,000 pigs, as I found out this was a very interesting species that I wanted to learn more about. Well, this opportunity ended up being a defining point in my career and my whole life, as you will see along my story. A few months after starting as a volunteer, I was offered a temporary position as attending veterinarian while the position was open for competition. Thankfully, I was given the opportunity to participate in this selection, and I was offered the position as attending veterinarian. My early experiments at that job attempted to find solutions how to minimize the death rate of attended pig birds. We launched a small experiment to synchronize the birth of piglets using hormonal treatments to reduce the mortality of unattended births. I was invited to present results of this study at the local pig producers meeting, where my future advisor, Carlos P. Joan from University of Minnesota, was invited as a keynote speaker. Another door opened then. Well, that advisor was looking for graduate students particularly interested on pig health and respiratory diseases. He encouraged me to apply to the graduate school at the University of Minnesota, contingent to passing the TOEFL exam, which I had to rush to present. 3 months later, you could see me looking at the map to locate the Twin Cities, as I was offered a 4-year scholarship with a 50% assistantship to join his research group. It was a wide-eyed opening experience to jump from the field of animal production in Colombia to the research bench in St. Paul, Minnesota, and see all those fancy laboratory equipment that I would never imagine I would have access before. It was a wonderful and chilly experience, considering that my genes were not prepared to adapt to the frigid temperatures of Minnesota winters. There were 4 winters. Fortunately, I also enjoy short summers that allow me to escape to the wilderness, as you can see here at the Boundary Waters Canoe area close to Canada. That was a fantastic experience. Overall, I live many experiences I treasured as they helped me grow in every aspect of my life. I had the opportunity to meet a lot of good mentors and learn more on swine animal diseases through research, which definitely helped me open the next door. A postdoctoral opportunity at USDA as part of the Animal and Disease Resistance Laboratory. I still remember the day I met my next advisor, Dr. John Lunny, while participating on a swine in biomedical research meeting held at University of Maryland College Park. After meeting briefly for the first time, we agreed to submit a research proposal to obtain funding through the National Pork Producers Council. I have to admit I did not have too much knowledge on parasites at that time. But there we go. I was given the opportunity, I took it, we participated in preparing the proposal, and guess what? We got it. It was great news. However, that came with a lot of stress, because at that time I was still preparing my PhD defense. Fortunately, John was able to delay the start for a few months to give me time to wrap up my work and drive down to Maryland after a 3 feet of snow storm in the middle of March the previous day. That was quite a trip. I still remember it. My research started on parasitic respiratory diseases and mucosal immunology, which helped me open the next door at a different laboratory at the agency, but this time as a scientist. So my research had a twist. This time was studying the impact of nutritional interventions on health promotion using the pig, my favorite species, as a translational human model. This has been a challenging experience that continuously have given me opportunities to learn, adapt to changing science, to keep up with the demands of maintaining an active research program. As an example, let me tell you what we are currently doing. We are feeding pigs a diet supplemented with fruits and vegetables, the ones that we are supposed to consume every day, to evaluate its impact on health promotion. So, as an example, as part of our experiments, we always take several measurements. In the upper part, we could see in here the characterization of the microbiome. So each of these circles represent a different pig, and then we see how do they react when they are exposed to different dietary treatments. We have the possibility of doing longitudinal studies to track the effect of these dietary interventions on the microbiome of the animals. Similarly, in the lower panel, we could see an example of the changes that occur on the transcriptome of these animals. We can see that there's some genes that are being downregulated, while other genes are being upregulated in response to these dietary interventions. And the purpose of doing all these studies is because we want to be able to measure the impact of these dietary interventions on host health and disease prevention, hopefully contributing to the dissemination of this information to encourage the American public to consume a more beneficial diet. Other studies that we have done in our group involve the use of cocoa or the use of mushroom. If you are interested in these topics, you are welcome to see the information in the agency website. Finally, I just want to say that I always use the example of my journey to mentor, coach other students that are now in a similar situation as I was many years ago. Fortunately, I have the opportunity in this job to help other students that are starting their own journey. I strongly believe that knocking on several doors, looking for opportunities to learn, train, volunteer, is the best way and the best rewarding experience, especially in this more competitive world where, unfortunately, research resources are limited and not evenly available to all the students. As I always tell my kids, you have to try harder every day, and your effort somehow will be rewarded. Well, so this is the end of my presentation. Muchas gracias and happy Hispanic Heritage Day. Bye.
Okay. I'm Talo Pastor Corrales. I'm a scientist in the soybean genomics lab at Beltsville. I was born in a small village in northern Peru in the desert. My village had about probably 80 people. There was no water, there was no electricity in that village. But, you know, I think most people were very happy with working in agriculture, producing corn, cassava, cotton, and other crops. And I was, my mother sent us to go to school in a city called Chiclayo, which is about 60 miles from my house. To me, it was going to Paris at the time. So I studied there, my primary school, secondary school. And a few years before I finished my high school, the agronomy university was created, the first university in the department. I applied to the university and studied agronomy the first 2 years. And a professor from Illinois came to collect plants for a research project that he had in the US. And he was asked to give us a class in botany, and I took that class. I was studying English I don't know why studying English, and I will go to ask him questions in English, and he say, "Why are you studying here? You should go to the U.S." And long story short, he brought me to the U.S. So I received my bachelor's of science and botany from Eastern Illinois University, and some of the professors encouraged me that I should go for a master's degree. So I received a master's degree in mycology, the study of fungi. And from there, I went to Texas A&M and got a PhD in plant pathology. I had a professor that was very, very international. And during my research was done in Brazil, in Guatemala, in Georgia, and Texas A&M. And I was supposed to travel to India, but I ran out of time. But anyway, that experience gave me the idea that I could work in international agriculture. So I applied for a position at the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, one of the 17 international centers all over the world. The center at SIA was called CIAT, International Center for Tropical Agriculture. They were doing research on crops like cassava, beans, rice, and tropical pastures. And most of the scientists were not Colombian, because this is not an institute of Colombia. It's an international institute based in Colombia. And I was named the plant pathologist for the bean project, the bean research project, which included 20 countries in Latin America and 12 countries in Africa. And so many diseases I was studying. And so it was an incredible experience for me to learn not just my diseases of beans in Brazil, Mexico, Central America, Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, etc., it was just an incredible experience in learning about the world and world agriculture. And I spent 17 years at a center. It was one of my best experience in my life. And after that experience, I was so happy with the experience. And so when I was applied for a job at USDA, I was very happy that we could continue working with beans. So I came to Beltsville in March of 2000. And I started in the molecular plant pathology lab, but was transferred to the vegetable lab in a different building. And from there, I went to the soybean genomics lab, where I have been for many years now. And very, very happy that I continue working in a crop that is extremely essential for nutrition of poor people, particularly in Latin America, and also Africa. But not only. Beans have become very popular as a food for many people because it's very rich in protein, very rich in carbohydrate and complex carbohydrates, fiber, and many others. So if you eat beans with a cereal, it's very much like eating meat without cholesterol, without fats. So it's a wonderful crop to do research. I have been doing research on major pathogens of common being in the world, and these are pathogens. I specialize in pathogens that change continuously their virulence. So it's a challenge to develop resistant varieties to these pathogens because they change, just like COVID, they change a lot. And so we have strategies that involve pyramids of genes, meaning combining several resistant genes. And to that end, we use conventional tools, and now we use a lot of genomic tools as well. And I collaborate in my work with the universities of Michigan, North Dakota, Nebraska, which are the largest producers of common bean in the US. And beans in the US, the value of the crop is about $1 billion a year. About 20 to 30% of the crop is exported to many countries, including Venezuela, Cuba, Mexico, and others in Arabic countries and so on. So, and I'm incredibly happy that I have spent most of my life, almost 40 years now, working on research to make beans more productive, using tools that are environmentally friendly and good for the environment, because beans produce nitrogen in the soil, enriching the soil for other crops, not just for beans, but for other crops. And I couldn't be happier about that. So why did I become a scientist? Serendipity. The professor told me, you have to study botany or else we don't have other careers here. I'm a botanist, so I study botany. I like botany. And the rest is history, I guess, because I from botany I went into plant pathology, into research, and so on. The topics I'm studying now deals mostly with the topics I was studying 20, 30 years ago or more. The difference now is that we have new tools. When the genome of the common being was studied, it wasn't not many years ago. We developed many tools that accelerated our work and also make it more precise. In my case, to discover new genes and to use these genes in the development of bean varieties for the US and other countries. So that's the reason I collaborate with many scientists in the US, but also from Brazil and Mexico and other countries. And that is really very rewarding to me because I get to try. I have traveled extensively in the countries that produce beans, and I collaborated with people from different nations, different cultures, and so on and so forth. So we people that work in beans or other crops or do agricultural research in USDA or any other institutions, I think we're in a way privileged because we're doing work that helps societies, poor and rich. And I think our research also is used by scientists in Latin America, in Africa, in Europe. And so it's very, very rewarding, at least for me, and I think for all of us from Latin America that come to the US and spend a long time working in research. Some of the discoveries that we have is obviously in collaboration with other scientists. In my lab, there's scientists that are working in genomics that help me a lot with my research in the soybean genomics lab. So it's always a collaboration with other people that makes this work possible. And to me, collaborations are essential to elucidate problems that are difficult if you are working by yourself. And I believe very strongly in the capacity of a group to solve the problems that we face in agricultural research much better with through collaborations about your individual efforts. I feel very, very. I had many students also from in my lab, people that came from Brazil, from other countries to do their doctoral research in my lab, mostly to learn about genomics, how to use genomics to develop resistant plants to pathogens. And that also is very rewarding because these young people are also very ambitious. They're very ambitious. They come with the idea of learning a lot. And it's really wonderful work with this type of people. In the end, I suppose I feel so very fortunate to have participated in or done work that has been very rewarding to me, and also I think to my bosses, I hope. And with that, I feel very, very. I should say that I'm very glad that I'm here. Thank you. My advice to young scientists is to be brave and to be to consider many situations that can enhance their knowledge and the experience in agricultural research. I know of young scientists from Colombia that were technicians at the institute where I used to work in Colombia, at the CIAT. And they, of course, they work with several scientists that were graduates of the USA universities. And these people, they were very much engaged in the research and they were very positive. And somehow they came to the US. And I know of 4 of them. One is a professor in Michigan State, another is a professor at North Dakota University, another is a professor in the University of Nebraska, and others. And I think you have to be positive, you have to be curious, and you have to reach out to people that can help you. It's very, very important, but you must remain positive with the idea or knowledge that you will grow and will meet your expectations as you go forward. But you have to be very involved. You have to be very proactive. You cannot do this by being inactive. You have to get involved, very involved, and learn all the time, and you grow and you will become a great scientist. I'm sure of this because I've seen it over and over. So it's very important to reach out to others and to remain curious, to remain positive about the areas in which you have interest. Thank you.